Thank you very much for giving me a screen and giving me a voice. And my name is Gawel Solosky from Bengal University. I'm specialist in dark fermentation, and this is topic quite wide, which involves hydrogen production from different organic waste by anaerobic digestion. And not continued into methane production. So this is the special case of anaerobic digestion. The special case usually occurs when bacteria are specially prepared. In case of unprepared, occur in nature, but we still don't or cannot repeat this in our experiments. The natural forms of dark fermentation you can observe in case of gangrene infection or tooth decay, bacterial decay. Both occurring bacteria, in case of infection, produces hydrogen. In case of gangrene, when infected the blood vessel, the blood part, the body part, the bacteria comes to the wound, usually from some dirty areas where they occurs, for example, quite often in manual different. So if the manual comes, unfortunately, to your wound, and you don't clean this wound properly, then this bacteria comes to your blood, to your body, and start hosting your body. That bacteria is called Clostridium perfringens. It's very unfavorable, and usually infection leads nowadays to removal of this part of body, for example, leg. So you need to, if your finger will be infected by gangrene, usually your finger would be amputated, because if not, the bacteria will grow and develop into other parts of body, resulting bigger and bigger infection. This infection, when you touch the infected body, you will listen to these noises. According to research from Tatri from 1995, because no one was researching its further, the hydrogen concentration can be in this vessel infected even 15%. So quite high, especially when bacteria is not any treated. So not any heat shock, any way, only maybe some responses with antibodies of host, but very, as observed, very few, because antibodies cannot fight with them. So the bacteria included in your vessel will stop gradually growing, infecting even all body as it occurs in the case of Henry VIII and can lead to death, as his wound when he, during the night tournament enjoyment, he fell with his horse, and his horse fell on his knees, and caused that some risk of bacteria counts, and unfortunately, firstly, Henry VIII was feeling very unnice because he was healed by his favorite treatment by mercury, which was completely unaffected. And then he didn't want to get amputated, so he died. He found that in 1546, and hydrogen was so high that after burial, his body and his tombstone exploded. So this is the high of percentages in case of Clostridium perfrinoldensis. In case of other like Citrobacterium or Enterobacterium, they can infect you in teeth. If your teeth will come, because to your teeth, if you're especially sugar, well, it's not undigested, it's believed to be perfect sauce due to very simple structure. So bacteria don't, if you don't will wash your teeth and remove this rest, they are excellent feed for bacteria. These bacteria, by eating this sugar, will produce, because in their fermentation beside hydrogen, also some acids. These acids will destroy your teeth. Corona, and comes suddenly to your root, and then starting infection. The decay will develop, and the hydrogen occurring there would be often so high that your teeth would be destroyed and excavated, will be from this hydrogen occurring there. And this is the show, however, is not so high, so low, because in case of mouth, pH is between 6 to 7. So it is quite neutral. So hydrogen was not very optimal, because the optimum from bacteria is from 5 to 6. So higher level of pH. So this shows that not very favored, but of conditions. But they host and they produce, in case of some cases, much higher than hydrogen than in our case. We still cannot mostly produce B2B in concentration in yield of 15%, so from 1 kilogram. However, there are materials that could even more. The trouble is that limitation of bacteria and pathway, because these bacteria can produce hydrogen in 3 possible pathways. However, these pathways can be developed into two substages if we call pyruvic acid pyruvic transformation to other acid as internal stage, because the substrate, for example, sugar or protein or glycerol, which is usually proposed because is not very often in nature. So the feed usually needs, as the waste, some pretreatment to be on the form of this simple organic matter, which is more favorable. So the model pathway is on glucose as considered to be favored by bacteria. This causes that when it comes to glucose, first occurs pyruvic acid and one hydrogen. Then over another cycle of pyruvic acid and second hydrogen, and we get the case, which is butyric acid pathway, because pyruvic acid transforms into butyric acid and produce two molecules of hydrogen. Of course, there also occurs two carbon dioxide molecules. This is causing, it is most probable to lower Gibbs energy from these pathways. The low Gibbs energy causes and shows probability lower. The reaction is more spontaneous and more probable. Therefore, the butyric acid pathway is most common. It can be pyruvic acid into. Also coming to the propionic acid, which is less favored because sometimes higher than butyric acid, but most desirable is acetic pathway, which occurring quite low because quite very high Gibbs energy. You cannot produce more because of them, because if you would like produce more, the Gibbs energy will be positive, so cannot occur such reaction. So we have the highest yield in case is 33% if we take acetic acid, which it is the theoretical maximum hydrogen production. And in case of calculating planning, we usually choose that everything is open. So if we hope that every part of our waste will come to by acetic pathway, and this is 33%, as the highest theoretic yield. But unfortunately, mostly hydrogen production comes into acetic butyric pathway. So the very high percentage yield is in case of 15. So because of that, even 16% it can be used as conventional of research in 2020 in Mexico, that it's enough to 15% yield to be sufficient for industry to develop this process. Because the trouble was that before that, there wasn't any trial, there was very few trials to produce the hydrogen production by dark fermentation industrially. After this, some production occurs due to, in case of where sugar production is high and produce lot of waste, for example, beets or beet production or cane from cane production everywhere when there's much sugar, much waste, milk, because the dark fermentation is not maybe very efficient way of hydrogen production, but very efficient way to utilize much of waste, because we utilize quite much of organic waste. However, in quite low energy model, because it requires only temperature, in 36 to 40 in case mesophilic. In case of thermophilic, some 55 to 60, which is maybe slightly higher. But mesophilic, there is also psychophilic, but it's very low, lowest efficiency, so only plant in case of high mountains. But in case mesophilic, in some areas, you don't need to crave any energy to maintain reactor and process keeping, because 36 usually sometimes in Egypt is not a problem. So it can be work. But, and the biggest is that much waste is utilized. Some hydrogen comes into a production, can stimulate methane production, and this is because hydrogen added to anaerobic process to methane production helps shifting to higher methane production. And also this acid like butyric or propionic anesthetic can be used as in cosmetics and after isolation, which is quite cheap. It is used especially at Sweden. Is quite much research about the even using this dark fermentation process only to produce butyric, mostly to produce butyric and acetic in quite cheaper way, but than conventional methods. For Fischer-Tropsch method, for example, much safe, much easier in case of butyric acid, or much easier than in case from so it is started to be used in cosmetics. The hydrogen production needs to be replaced because mostly conventional method. But it looks that maybe some other cases of bacteria will be more promising, like for example microbial electrolytic cells. So by potential. In case of water, in case of ammonia, because water is supercharged, and in some rest, some like butyric acid also can be without charging, but mostly, mostly promising is ammonia. So this is the end. Thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you very much for giving me a voice.